Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be talking about something pretty profound, I think. Humanity's role as stewards of the earth.
Yes.
You've given me some really interesting material to dig into.
Absolutely. And it looks like we'll be going over the concept of stewardship,
Okay.
looking at how different cultures view it, and then even some ethical and spiritual dimensions of it as well.
So to kick things off, I noticed just going through the material that the idea of stewardship pops up across different cultures
Yeah.
and history. I mean, the Guardians of Earth book you gave me highlights this.
Right.
It even mentions the Maori concept of kaitiakitanga,
Yes.
which isn't just about managing resources, right?
No, kaitiakitanga goes a little bit deeper than that. It extends to the spiritual realm, and it suggests a responsibility that comes from a deep, interconnected respect for nature
Wow.
and acknowledging that there's a spiritual essence to the natural world.
It's a beautiful concept.
Yeah, beautiful concept.
And a great example of how different cultures have approached this idea of stewardship for centuries.
Yeah.
The book also mentions Eastern philosophies like Confucianism and Taoism,
Right.
both of which also emphasize harmony with nature. It's fascinating how these ideas, though, from parts of the world
Yeah.
share a common thread.
They do. Both Confucianism and Taoism really highlight the importance of living in balance with the natural world.
Right.
They see humanity as part of nature, not separate from it.
Yeah.
And this interconnectedness is a core principle in both of those philosophies.
It makes you wonder what these ancient philosophers would make of some of our modern-day environmental challenges.
Right.
Like plastic pollution in the ocean.
Yeah.
Or the complexities of climate change.
For sure.
It's hard to imagine that they could foresee these issues.
It is, however, even though the context is different.
Right.
Those core values embedded in these philosophies,
Yeah.
the balance, the respect for nature, understanding that interconnectedness, I think, are even more relevant now
Totally.
as we grapple with the consequences of losing sight of that balance.
So true. And speaking of consequences, the source material also dives into the ethics of stewardship
Okay.
and asks a question that I think we all struggle with. Does nature have value simply because it exists?
Right.
Or is its value only tied to how useful it is to humans?
Yeah, that is the question.
That's a tough one.
That's really the heart of the intrinsic versus instrumental value debate.
Okay.
Do we value nature for its own sake, its inherent worth, or purely for what it can provide us, resources, services, and so on?
Right. And then there's this idea of intergenerational justice.
Yes.
Which you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
This adds another layer to this ethical puzzle, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
Intergenerational justice argues that we have a moral obligation to leave a healthy planet for future generations.
Oh, wow.
That we can't just use up all the resources or irreversibly damage ecosystems without considering the impact it will have on those who come after us.
The book brings up a real-world dilemma that illustrates this tension.
Okay.
We need to produce enough food to feed a growing population.
Right.
But many agricultural practices have negative long-term impacts on the environment. So how do we balance these urgent needs with the need to protect the planet for future generations?
It's a constant tug of war, isn't it?
It feels like it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really at the heart of a lot of environmental debates.
Okay.
How do we ensure a good quality of life for everyone alive today while safeguarding the planet for future generations?
Right.
It's complex, but the concept of intergenerational justice forces us to really grapple with these difficult questions.
One thing that surprised me while I was going through all this material was the emphasis on religion and spirituality when it comes to environmental care.
Okay.
I hadn't really made that connection before.
Yeah, it's an important connection. A lot of different faiths have integrated care for the earth into their teachings.
Right.
You see it in Christianity's concept of stewardship, where humans are tasked with caring for God's creation.
Yeah. And in Jewish teachings that emphasize protecting the natural world, recognizing it as a divine gift.
Exactly. And Islamic principles that stress balance and conservation, acknowledging that interconnectedness of all life and the responsibility that humans have to maintain that balance.
It's amazing to see how these different religious perspectives, although rooted in different belief systems, converge on this idea of caring for the earth. It makes you wonder.
Yes. What were you going to say?
Does having that spiritual connection to nature actually motivate people to be better stewards of the environment?
That's a really interesting question, and it certainly seems plausible that when you see the natural world as sacred or as a divine creation, that would instill a deeper sense of responsibility.
Right. And it's not just the Abrahamic faiths either.
No.
Buddhism emphasizes the interconnectedness of all beings,
Yes,
which naturally extends to the environment.
it does.
And many indigenous spiritual traditions view nature as sacred,
Right.
with a deep reverence for the earth and its elements.
Absolutely. These examples really highlight the universal nature of this concept. Caring for our planet is a value that transcends cultural and religious boundaries. And it speaks to something fundamental about our relationship with the natural world.
But here's a question that keeps popping into my head. If all these diverse cultures and religions have been emphasizing stewardship for centuries,
Yeah.
why are we facing such massive environmental problems today? It seems like a paradox.
It is a question that has puzzled many thinkers and scholars, and to be honest, there isn't one simple answer.
Yeah.
But the source material does offer some insights.
Okay.
It points to the complexities of human history and the unintended consequences of our progress.
So it's not just about a lack of awareness or good intentions.
Right. Think about that chapter in Guardians of Earth that talks about the rise of civilization. And it argues that while urbanization and agriculture were really crucial for human development,
Right.
they also had significant environmental impacts.
Right, like a double-edged sword. We developed these systems to meet our needs.
Exactly.
But those very systems led to deforestation pollution, overexploitation of resources.
Right. The source material uses the analogy of a ripple effect. So the impact of these early advancements, though maybe not immediately obvious at the time, spread outwards, creating challenges that we are still grappling with today.
And then came the Industrial Revolution,
Yes.
which the source material points out really accelerated those challenges.
Did.
The shift to fossil fuels, mass production, a consumer-driven economy,
Right.
led to a whole new level of environmental impact.
It did. It was a period of unprecedented technological innovation and economic growth,
Yeah.
but it came at a cost. And the source material doesn't condemn progress, but it does highlight the importance of considering the long-term environmental consequences of our actions.
So it's not that we weren't thinking about sustainability back then,
Right.
but rather that the scale and the complexity of the problems have evolved. And it's like we've been playing catch-up ever since.
That's a good way to put it. And
Yeah.
even today, despite all the knowledge we have about climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss,
Yeah.
we are still struggling to shift to truly sustainable practices on a global scale.
I get that. And the source material hints at some of the reasons for this.
Yeah.
It mentions things like just the sheer complexity of the problems, the competing interests, a lack of political will. It can feel pretty overwhelming.
It can, but I do want to emphasize that the source material isn't all doom and gloom.
Okay, yeah.
It also highlights some potential solutions,
Right.
ways we can move forward in a more sustainable direction.
Tell me more about those.
Right.
I could use a dose of optimism right now.
Well, one really promising avenue is what the source material calls nature-based solutions,
Okay.
essentially working with natural processes instead of against them.
What does that look like in practice?
Things like reforestation,
Okay.
restoring wetlands, and promoting sustainable agriculture practices. These approaches not only address environmental problems,
Yeah.
but also provide a whole range of co-benefits.
Right.
From cleaner air and water to climate change mitigation and enhanced biodiversity.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing nature as something to be conquered or controlled,
Right.
we're partnering with it to create a more sustainable future.
Exactly. And the source material also highlights the crucial role of technology in this transition.
Okay.
Renewable energy efficiency, innovations in waste management, all of these play a part.
So it's not about going back to living in caves.
No.
It's about using our ingenuity to create a future where both humanity and the environment can thrive.
Exactly, a future within our reach.
Yeah. But here's the big question. Who's responsible for making this happen?
It's a big one. Is it governments, businesses, individuals, all of the above?
It sounds like it.
It is. The source material emphasizes that there's no single superhero who will swoop in and save the day.
Right.
It's a collective effort. Everyone has a role to play. Individuals, communities, businesses, governments. We all need to step up and take ownership of creating a more sustainable future.
So what does that look like on a practical level? What can individuals do to make a difference? Because sometimes it feels like our actions are just a drop in the ocean.
That's a common feeling, but it's important to remember that all those drops add up. The source material highlights the power of everyday choices. Reducing consumption, making sustainable purchases, conserving energy and water. These individual actions, when multiplied across millions of people, have a significant impact.
It's about being mindful of our footprint, even in small ways.
Exactly. And while individual actions are crucial, systemic change is equally important.
Okay.
That's where communities, governments, and businesses come in.
So pushing for stronger environmental policies, holding corporations accountable for their practices,
Yes.
and really creating a system that prioritizes sustainability.
Yes. It's about creating a culture of sustainability where environmentally responsible choices are not only encouraged but also supported by policies and infrastructure. It's about shifting our values and priorities as a society.
That sounds like a pretty major shift, almost a cultural revolution. But if we can pull it off, the rewards could be huge.
They could be, and the source material actually paints a picture of what that more sustainable future could look like.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Paint me a picture. What does this brighter future look like?
Imagine cities designed for sustainability powered by renewable energy, with green spaces integrated into the urban fabric and efficient transportation systems that prioritize walking, cycling, and public transit.
That sounds amazing.
And imagine food systems that nourish both people and the planet with regenerative agriculture practices that restore soil health, reduce reliance on pesticides, and minimize waste picture. A world where our energy comes from clean sources, our products are designed for circularity, and our communities are resilient in the face of environmental challenges.
It's a beautiful vision, but how do we get from where we are now to that kind of future?
Well, one of the most crucial steps, as highlighted in the source material, is education.
Education. Yeah, that makes sense. If people don't understand the problems or the potential solutions, then how can they get on board with making changes?
Exactly. The source material really emphasizes that environmental education needs to be woven into all levels of learning, from schools to community programs to professional development. We need to equip people with the knowledge and the critical thinking skills to make informed decisions.
Right. Knowledge is power, as they say.
It is.
But knowledge alone isn't enough, is it?
No.
How do we translate that understanding into action? How do we get people fired up and motivated to create change?
That's where community engagement and storytelling really come in. The source material is full of inspiring examples of communities, especially indigenous communities, who have been practicing sustainable resource management for generations.
It's true. Those communities hold so much wisdom. They figured out how to live in harmony with nature and have so much to teach us about respecting that delicate balance of ecosystems.
Absolutely. Their traditional ecological knowledge is invaluable, and we see similar things happening in modern-day community-led initiatives,
Right.
like those focused on urban gardening, renewable energy, or sustainable agriculture.
So it's about tapping into that local knowledge, empowering people to take ownership of their environment and fostering a sense of collective responsibility.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about top-down solutions.
So.
The source material also talks about the power of grassroots movements, ordinary people coming together to demand change, to challenge the status quo, and to hold decision makers accountable.
Right. It's like that Margaret Mead quote, right?
Yeah.
Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
I love that quote, and it's so true. Individual actions matter. But when we join forces, when we amplify our voices collectively, that's when real lasting change happens.
We're really talking about a shift in mindset, almost a cultural revolution, redefining our values and priorities, moving away from purely economic indicators of progress.
Yes.
For a more holistic view that encompasses well-being, environmental health, social justice.
You're exactly right. The source material even argues that we need to redefine what it means to be successful as a society. It's about recognizing that a healthy planet is the foundation for a healthy economy, for a just society, and for individual well-being.
So that all circles back to that interconnectedness that we were talking about earlier.
It does.
We started by exploring different cultures' views on stewardship, and now we're talking about a global shift in consciousness.
Right.
Recognizing that we're all part of this intricate web of life.
Yeah.
That our actions have ripple effects.
It's a beautiful way to put it, and it brings us back to the core of this deep dive. Humanity's role as stewards of the earth. It's not a burden.
Right.
It's a privilege and a responsibility.
A privilege and a responsibility to care for this incredible planet and ensure that future generations inherit a world where they can thrive. It's a daunting task.
Yeah.
But the source material makes it clear that we have the knowledge, we have the tools, and we have the capacity to change.
We do, and perhaps most importantly, we have the ability to choose a different path, to envision a future where we live in harmony with nature and create a more just and sustainable world.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired. This deep dive has been quite a journey, but it's left me with a renewed sense of hope and a clear call to action.
Me too. It's a reminder that we're not passive passengers on this planet. We're active participants capable of shaping the future we want to see.
So, to everyone listening out there, what will your role be in creating a more sustainable future? What seeds of change will you plant today? It's something for all of us to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations into the topics that matter most to you.
Until next time.